Imagine standing on the frozen banks of the Songhua River in northern China. The air burns with cold, and the city of Harbin lies wrapped in ice, its famous winter sculptures gleaming like glass under a pale sun. But long before this land became a kingdom of frost, it was something entirely different. Around 230,000 years ago, a rare breath of warmth swept across the Ice Age world. For a few fleeting millennia, glaciers retreated, rivers spread wide, and the northeast of China bloomed into a vast green Eden, a land of marshes, forests, and endless grasslands alive with mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant deer, and prowling tigers. It was here, in this forgotten paradise, that one of the most mysterious branches of humankind may have thrived, the Denisovans. The people of that vanished world hunted among herds of giants and watched the seasons turn beneath skies heavy with migrating birds. Their footprints mingled with the tracks of beasts now extinct. Then the warmth faded, the ice returned, and time buried their story beneath layers of silence until one day a skull emerged from the frozen earth, cradled by human hands once more. That skull would come to be known as the Harbin cranium or dragon man, a fossil unlike any other, hidden away for nearly a century through war, secrecy, and chance. Its discovery would ignite a scientific revolution and challenge everything we thought we knew about who we are. This is not just a tale about an ancient skull. It's a journey into deep time, into a world where climate, chance, and courage shaped our ancestors in ways we are only beginning to understand. Because the story of Dragon Man is, in truth, the story of us. Long before the city of Harbin became a realm of ice and stone, the land itself was alive with warmth. During a brief and fragile interglacial known as marine isotope stage 7e, the cold grip of the Ice Age loosened. Glaciers melted back into distant valleys, and the plains of northeastern China were reborn. Great rivers braided across the landscape, feeding wetlands thick with reeds and flowers. Deciduous forests stretched for miles, glowing with maple and oak. Herds of mammoths and woolly rhinos wandered through misty grasslands, while tigers stalked red deer in the shadows of birch trees. The air was heavy with birdsong, and the earth, for a moment, was kind again. This short-lived Eden created something rare, an ecological corridor across Asia's northern frontier. It was a gateway that allowed early humans to move, settle, and evolve. The warmth invited them northward, following herds, building camps along the rivers, leaving behind stone flakes and ash where they cooked and dreamed. In this fleeting window of climate grace, life found a rhythm, and humankind found a foothold. Then, as millennia turned, the ice crept back. The rivers froze, the forests died, and everything that had lived in that warm age was swallowed by the cold, everything except a skull. The story begins in 1933, amid the chaos of war. Japanese troops occupied Manchuria, forcing local laborers to work on bridges and railways. One of those men, nameless in history, unearthed something extraordinary from the soil near the Songhua River, an enormous human skull, unlike any he had ever seen. Afraid the occupiers might seize it, he hid it deep inside an abandoned well. There it remained for more than 80 years, entombed in darkness, surviving revolution, famine, and time itself. In 2018, long after the war had faded into memory, the man's grandson quietly retrieved the skull and delivered it to Chinese paleoanthropologist Ji Qiang in a secret meeting. No one ever learned his name. He simply vanished, leaving behind a fossil that would rewrite the story of humanity in Asia. The skull, now called the Harbin cranium, or Dragon Man, was breathtaking. With a cranial volume of roughly 1,400 cubic centimeters, its brain was as large as, or larger than, ours. Its brow ridges were thick, its nose broad, its face wide and flat. The teeth were massive, yet the proportions strikingly modern. It was, as one researcher said, a face that bridges epochs, a frozen mosaic of evolution. Early tests dated it to between 146,000 and 300,000 years old, placing it squarely within that ancient warm age. And recent breakthroughs in 2024 and 2025, using proteomic and mitochondrial DNA analysis from dental data, confirmed what scientists had long suspected. The genetic signatures matched those of the Denisovans, a mysterious sister lineage to the Neanderthals. For the first time, the Denisovans had a face, a skull, a presence. Harbin was not just another fossil. It was the first nearly complete Denisovan cranium ever discovered. Jiqiang and his team proposed a new name, Homo longi, the Dragon Man. Some believe it could become the official name for the Denisovan species itself, a symbol of their strength and adaptability. But the Harbin skull is more than a relic. It is a witness, a survivor from a fleeting warm world where humans rose against the cold. A reminder that even in the harshest cycles of ice, life, and perhaps humanity itself, found a way to endure. From the frozen caves of Siberia, across the windswept heights of Tibet, and down into the steaming jungles of Southeast Asia, the trail of the Denisovans winds through half a continent. For decades, scientists believed these ancient humans were confined to the icy shadows of a single Siberian cave, but every new discovery has pushed their boundaries farther and farther east, revealing a lineage that was not isolated at all, but widespread, adaptable, and deeply woven into the story of Asia. High on the Tibetan Plateau, more than 10,000 feet above sea level, lies Baishia Karst Cave. Here, in the thin air where modern climbers struggle to breathe, a monk discovered a massive jawbone sealed in limestone. It would later be known as the Xiahe mandible, and tests revealed it was at least 160,000 years old. Its proteins match those of the Denisovans, proof that these people had survived in a place where oxygen levels are nearly half of what we breathe today. Long before modern humans mastered high-altitude life, Denisovans had already conquered the roof of the world. Far to the southeast, beneath the waves off Taiwan's coast, fishermen once dredged up another clue, a lower jaw so large and thick it could have come from a giant. Named Penghuwan, it belonged to a robust adult male, its teeth enormous, its bone structure unmistakably archaic. No DNA survived the sea's salt and pressure, but the chemistry of its enamel, the proteins preserved in its ancient tooth, spoke clearly. It was Denisovan, and deep within Cobra Cave in Laos, a single tooth told an even greater story. The molar, belonging to a young girl who lived more than 130,000 years ago, bore the same molecular fingerprint. It meant that Denisovans had reached the humid heart of Southeast Asia, a place of limestone cliffs, tropical rivers, and heat. They were not prisoners of the north. They thrived across deserts, mountains, and jungles alike. Each of these discoveries connects like nodes in a vast, invisible map. From the ice of Siberia to the peaks of Tibet, from the island shelf of Taiwan to the rainforests of Laos, Denisovans were not wanderers on the margins, they were builders of worlds. Their genetic legacy still pulses in the blood of people across Asia and Oceania. The evidence forces us to rewrite the map of prehistory. Asia wasn't the edge of humanity's journey, it was its beating heart. When we step back and look at this map of Denisovan traces across Asia, another set of clues begins to glow, not in teeth or jawbones, but deep inside the skull itself. In the rolling plains of central China, at a site called Lingjing in Henan province, archaeologists unearthed two remarkable crania, now known as the Shuchang skulls. At first glance, they look like they belong among the archaic humans of East Asia. But when scientists measured the space for the brain, they found something startling. One of the skulls, Shuchang 1, had a cranial volume of around 1,800 cubic centimeters. That is not just within the range of modern humans and Neanderthals. It is at the very top of it. Yet, it is not just the size that matters. The shape of the back of the skull, the occipital region, carries a subtle bulge reminiscent of Neanderthals. The contours of the cranial vault are low and wide, echoing features seen in Eastern archaic humans, but fused with traits that once seemed uniquely Neanderthal. When researchers looked closer at the base of the skull, at the openings and canals where nerves and blood vessels pass, they saw a mosaic that refused to fit neatly into any textbook category. Then, farther north in the Nihiwan Basin, at a site called Shujiyayao, another piece of the puzzle emerged. One particular fossil, known as Sujiyayao 15, preserved the tiny inner architecture of the ear. Inside our skulls, three delicate semicircular canals help us balance and orient ourselves. In Neanderthals, the proportions and curvature of these canals form a distinctive pattern, so consistent that for a long time scientists thought of it as a kind of anatomical fingerprint. Shujiayao 15, dated to roughly 100,000 years ago, shows that same Neanderthal-like pattern not in Europe, but in northern China. This is more than a curiosity. Traits once thought to be exclusive to Neanderthals are turning up in the heart of East Asia. It is very difficult to explain that away as coincidence. Either people carrying Neanderthal ancestry moved east, or Eastern populations shared deep roots and genes with them, or both. In any case, the clean lines that once separated Neanderthal from Asian archaic human begin to blur. Perhaps the people of Xuchang and Shujiayao were not pure Neanderthals nor pure Denisovans, but something in between, a bridge population standing at the crossroads of multiple lineages. If their bones carry the echoes of Neanderthal anatomy, their tools may also whisper of shared ideas. Far to the southwest, in Guizhou province, lies Longtan Cave. Here, archaeologists uncovered a toolkit that should not have been there if old theories were right. The stone tools from Longtan belong to what specialists call a quinotype, a branch of the Mousterian tradition most famously associated with Neanderthals in Ice Age Europe. These are not crude flakes knocked off at random. They are thick scrapers with steep, stepped retouch along their edges, reshaped again and again as they wore down, optimized for heavy work like scraping hides, shaping wood, and butchering large animals. Dating shows that these tools were being made around 50 to 60,000 years ago, roughly the same time Neanderthals in Europe were shaping very similar implements in cold, demanding environments. That raises a profound question. How did a distinctly Neanderthal style of technology appear in a cave in southwest China, more than 6,000 miles from the classic Neanderthal homeland? There are two main possibilities. The first is migration. Perhaps groups with strong Neanderthal ancestry or hybrid communities that carried Neanderthal traditions moved eastward over generations, following the steppe corridors of Central Asia, skirting the edges of the Tibetan Plateau, and eventually reaching what is now Guizhou. They would have brought their tool-making habits with them, teaching their children to shape stone the way their ancestors had done thousands of miles away. The second possibility is convergence. Maybe the people living in and around Longtan Cave were primarily Denisovan or members of a local hybrid population, facing climate pressures very similar to those that Neanderthals faced in Europe. Thick skins to process, tough wood to work, large animals to butcher. Faced with the same problems, they may have arrived at the same solutions. Starting from a simpler stone tradition, they could have independently developed a quinoa-like method because it simply worked. Either way, the message is the same. These tools are not the products of a stagnant, backward culture. They speak of planning, skill, and a deep understanding of materials and environments. Whether borrowed or reinvented, they point to a world where ideas and genes flowed across landscapes we once thought were empty. They tell us that Asia was never a cultural backwater. It was a laboratory of human innovation. In the humid hills of southern China, near the town of Maba in Guangdong province, workers once discovered the fractured remains of an ancient skull. It belonged to a woman who had lived somewhere between 120 and 140,000 years ago. At first glance, her fossils seemed to tell a simple story, another archaic human in a long list of prehistoric finds. But when scientists placed the skull under a CT scanner, they found something hauntingly human. Across the left side of her cranium was a deep dent, the kind of depression made by a violent blow from a blunt object, perhaps a stone, a heavy bone, or a wooden club. The wound would have caused massive pain, swelling, and likely a concussion. But the most astonishing detail was this: the bone had healed. This woman had lived for years after her skull was shattered. Someone must have helped her. Someone must have tended to her when she could not hunt, when she could not move, when dizziness blurred the world around her. Whether her injury came from an attack, an accident, or a clash between rival groups, we will never know. But her survival carries a deeper message. In a time when life was short and harsh, when cold and hunger stalked every step, someone cared enough to keep her alive. They shared food, They watched over her. In that act of mercy, we glimpse something extraordinary: compassion. Even in a brutal Ice Age world, compassion had already evolved. Her story reminds us that violence and kindness are both ancient parts of what it means to be human. We are born of struggle and survival, but also of empathy. The same hands that could wield a weapon were also capable of healing. Far to the southwest, in Yunnan and Guangxi, another mystery awaited beneath the limestone. In caves once lit by the flicker of Ice Age fires, scientists found the bones of people unlike any others. They were called the Red Deer Cave People, after the animals whose remains were found beside them. These humans lived as recently as 17 to 11,000 years ago, when early civilizations were already stirring elsewhere, yet their bones carried echoes of a deeper past. Their skulls were smaller, their faces broader, their jaws more archaic. They were modern, and yet not. Some believe they were descendants of Denisovans. Others think they were the last flicker of an ancient hybrid population that had persisted in the forests of southern China long after the glaciers retreated. Whatever their true identity, they stand as proof that evolution is not a clean line but a woven tapestry. Their bones were echoes of an ancient chorus, voices of hybrid humanity still singing beneath our skin. And so the story comes full circle. From the green plains of Harbin to the high caves of Tibet, from the stone tools of Longtan to the fractured skull of Maba, from the islands of Taiwan to the rainforests of Laos, all are threads in one vast pattern. The history of humankind is not a tree with tidy branches. It is a river braided, divided, reunited, carrying the currents of countless lives that met, mingled, and became us. They were not others. They were us, in different forms, at different times. The Dragon Man's face, weathered by ages of silence, reminds us that the past was never simple. It was human, and it was never gone. So, as you look into the mirror of time, remember this. Within every heartbeat flows the legacy of all who came before Neanderthals, Denisovans, and the unnamed souls who carried fire through the dark. Share their story, because it is, and always will be, our own.